I think a lot of brokers really don't truly understand how big shippers buy freight. Maybe they do, but my feeling is they don't. If you go with like a John Deere 3M.
The trucking industry is crazy right now, and being a broker can be stressful. Managing your invoices, billing, collecting, carrier base, and cash flow can feel like an impossible task. But I can tell you, OTR Solutions has figured out the impossible. They eliminate cash flow problems for carrier payments and ensure margin funding in just 24 hours with broker invoice factoring. OTR Solutions takes care of billing and collection processes with your shippers. And with lightning quick and accurate invoicing, your customers will never need another broker to handle their freight needs. Kick back, relax, and let OTR take care of your brokerage. If you want to know more, and I hope you do, check them out at otrsolutions.com/freight-caviar to see what they can do for your business. Or give them a call. They love to talk to brokers at 770-882-0124. We've partnered with Ascend TMS, the world's most popular and top-rated transportation management system. It's the ultimate tool for all your freight needs. You can use our referral code RA-FreightCaviar! To receive 3 months of Ascend TMS for free. It only takes 20 seconds to sign up and no credit card is required. You can click the link below to learn more. Welcome everyone to another episode of the FreightCaviar Podcast. Today's guest is Brad Hollister. Brad, thanks for coming on the show. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you first became interested in the freight logistics industry?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So my journey started about 2005, I think. I went and worked for some friends of mine that were negotiating the FedEx and UPS contracts, actually. And that industry is kind of past its time a little bit. I think that there's clear leaders in that, but back in that day, it was a new industry. No one really knew what it was. It was a gain share type relationship to help people reduce costs. So it was an interesting intro to logistics in general. But if anyone's ever worked with friends, I think everyone knows how that kind of ends. And so I said, that's it. I'm going to go work for this local company that just got bought out named Saia, and they were rolling out their nationwide network. And it was a crazy time in the mid 2000s in the LTL space because a lot of the policies that govern that industry now weren't even in place then, like OSND and reways and even like fuel surcharges and things weren't even in place like back then. So, and it was this especially good experience working for Saia that like literally did not have their stuff together and like kind of making policies as they went, or they would roll out a policy and then like roll it back. And it was a really good time to learn the business. I mean, Saia was strong at that time down the Southeast, but they were trying to get a nationwide network. So it was really, really good experience. I worked there for a few years and then went and worked for a freight brokerage. And back in, so that would have been 2008, 2009. I was like literally asking myself, like, this is how freight brokerage works. This is ridiculous. On one hand, I thought we didn't have enough value in the equation from just a transactional freight brokerage. Like, man, we're making 30% on this load. But then on the other hand, like we would work so hard and miss a lot of loads or not get awarded those loads. So it's like, I really didn't like the business that much. And I thought it should be automated that back then. And I think everyone in the world in this industry has often thought that they could fix, or there's ideas that everyone has had to try to fix and automate freight brokerage and make freight brokers irrelevant. But clearly that's not happened and probably will not in our careers. But I left. What's that?
I said Uber is trying to do that, or
okay, fine. But at the end of the day, they're the same damn thing. They just got a different jersey on, like they're still doing the same thing. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's I feel like they got a lot more reps now, and that at least you could reach somebody, instead of just being all automated.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny how that works, right? Like, they have the tech to fully automate. Now they're going the other way. Like, do we need to do like Wait, do we need to do like a disclosure that the opinions expressed on this podcast are not necessarily those of FreightCaviar?
Oh, we don't have to. That's what Bob should have done before he got a cease and desist letter from TQL. That's behind him. Yeah.
That's funny. No, so that was, so I actually made a really nice tech that was allowed people to put their freight rates and their trucks in and start to do like a load matching. And it was copied by somebody, and they went out of business and actually ended up selling for like a fire sale. But I had the tech done. It was really awesome. I mean, it was like you could actually search for who's hauling these lanes, connect with them, chat, because that's what we were doing as freight brokers in the mid 2000s. I mean, I had Yahoo chat open, AOL chat, Skype. I forget all the different chat bots I had open trying to talk to different people at some of the big carriers. I mean, we even double brokered a lot back in that time, as a small broker, we would go to CH and stuff. So that's how it went. And so I had this awesome like chat, everything. And then the biggest customer that I had was a seat manufacturer. And the day that we were going to go sign the term sheet for $2 million, I called them, and because right before I was leaving for the meeting, I noticed that they hadn't logged in a couple of days. And I'm like, what the hell? So I finally got a hold of them in the car, and I said, well, what happened? Like, why aren't you logged in? They're like, do you not like it? Or is there a bug? Or what's going on? And they said, no, we love it. It's awesome. We can find trucks. We're building our carrier network with you guys, but we're just too busy. We just got to get the orders out right now. And I'm like, oh my God, how, like, now's the time you should be using it. Like, you're busy. You're going to save a few $100s by going right to the trucking companies, and finding the right carrier. Because my belief in transportation, the way to save money in transportation is not to beat people up, but to find the right carrier that matches at that time,
Yeah.
And so literally realizing that the tech idea that I built to kind of like put your loads in and then, get bids on from the market, like literally isn't what big shippers wanted. And it still isn't, I think. In 2023, it's not. And that was,
why
probably
is that,
13 years ago. Because we have to, I think a lot of brokers really don't truly understand how big shippers buy freight. Maybe they do, but my feeling is they don't. If you go with like a John Deere, 3M, Land O'Lakes, like these huge 3M, did I say 3M? Yeah, these massive companies, they put out an annual bid, you know what I mean? Or a biannual bid, a 2-year bid. And that's the pricing. And then they award lanes based on the bid, and they put it in their Oracle or SAP system. That's it. And we have a family member she's a load planner is what her title was. I don't think she's doing, she moved position, but she was a load planner for a long time. I'm like, okay, well, what do you do? She's like, well, I just basically go to the preferred carrier and I tender the shipment to them. And they have so much time. If they don't respond, then we go to the second one. That's how they run it. And nobody at Land O'Lakes or 3M or these big companies care if the pricing is good or bad. No one cares. It's just that as long as it hits the budget that they put out, then everyone's fine. So if you call them with a mass, I'm going to save you 20%, like every freight broker leads with, it seems like they don't care, man. You're just annoying the hell out of them. They've already got the plan and it's above them. And so I went to Honda North America, and I looked at in my former role at SwanLeap, which we'll get to. I went to Honda North America and I looked at their freight cost. I thought they were paying 54% over market rate.
Oh, wow.
And once we presented that, we never heard from them again. I mean, they'd have to, you imagine, like, I didn't even think about it. Like, they'd have to restate earnings. I mean, they'd have to like explain that, hey, listen, we did a really bad job for a long time and no one wanted that. So like, no one wants to save money in corporate logistics. It doesn't work like that. And that's what we built. So with SwanLeap, I left the freight brokerage to build that tech. The tech, I shelved it. I did not take the money. I told the investors that it's not gonna go right. It's not, the market doesn't want this. I know I spent the last 6 months convincing you guys it's the future. I think it's not the future anymore. And I went off on my own to help people reduce costs in shipping, right? Like parcel, LTL, truckload. And and then needed a little tech, and then we was eventually connected into the ERPs and started to automate that process of decision making. So what SwanLeap did better, I think, than almost anybody. I didn't see too many people that did automated procurement the way we did at a huge, massive discount. Like automated procurement is happening now, but the ability to shop and to look at mode consolidation and do a lot of those automated decision making that humans make at a mass scale, I think we did better than anybody. And so that's what we built at SwanLeap.
Hey there, amazing listeners. If you're enjoying what you're hearing on our podcast, we need your support. It will only take a moment, but it would mean the world to us. Please make sure to hit the like button on this video, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to share with one of your friends that would enjoy our content. Your engagement helps us reach more people and bring more awesome episodes to you. Thanks a million, and thanks for being part of the podcast community.
So what exactly is SwanLeap? Because I personally never heard of it. Like, what was the difference between that, or what exactly was SwanLeap?
Yes, SwanLeap is a shipper side TMS with freight payment audit connected. So freight payment auditing is still a service provided in the market. And there's a whole industry in that. So imagine if you are a major shipper. Let's pick on the mentioned companies that we've talked about already, like 3M and Land O'Lakes and John Deere and those
3M stock is doing horrible, by the way.
I know. I saw that. I bet you we can fix it.
I invested money into that company, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna give my dividends. I'm gonna get this. Yeah, right. Now I'm like down a couple of grand. But anyway.
Well, we should fix their logistics.
Exactly.
If they would have hired SwanLeap, they wouldn't have that problem. But
yeah.
But so then imagine this though. So this is how we sold to every shipper, right? And it was a shipper side TMS. So that's probably why a lot of brokers and truck drivers didn't have a lot of experience with it, right? But imagine we connect to the ERP and that load planner that has her list of like 3 different trucking companies. Now all of a sudden says, we say, okay, use the 3 you have. It's fine. Use your plan. But let's also find out where the market is on this shipment, right? Mm-hmm. So on Friday, you have, going from Chicago to Miami. Let's see who else is out there in the market. And trucking companies could actually put their rates in or bid and then look for opportunities to find additional sources of loads at a higher premium than what they're getting maybe from like a CH board or something like that.
Question before we move on. So like the shipper, he had 3 different carriers that he can use. So technically those carriers were kind of like on an almost dedicated list with that shipper, right? So basically,
yeah, the contracted rates, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, Bob, you on the trucking side, right? Now you on the trucking side. Check this out. This is what I think is so crazy to me. Right now, if I was in a position to look for a carrier and I send you a list of all my lanes and all that kind of stuff, and I send you, hey, I need a bid for 18 months, right?
Yeah.
Where are you going to get those rates from? You're the truck company that's responsible for giving me rates. I'm asking you to bid.
Right.
What the hell are you going to do, Bob? You're going to guess.
Well,
you have no idea where the market's going to be a year from now.
Yeah, but then again, so from the past history, kind of how I've been doing it, right? We know what we pay our drivers. We know what our fuel cost is, but then we can obviously the fuel costs go down, up and down. The driver pay goes up and down, and then the equipment and insurance. So you kind of can break it down, and you know what you need to be in between, and anything above that is great. So
okay, so that's how the industry works, right?
Yeah.
So now you give me the contract rate. I sign some kind of commitment or award to you that you're my primary carrier in this lane, right? Now there's a hurricane in Houston, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't there something in North Carolina a couple of years ago too? I think in the Carolinas there's a hurricane. Now you got people calling. Yeah. So you got people now, Generac and water companies and stuff calling you. They're willing to pay you $8 a mile. I got you at 2. What are you going to tell me? I don't have a truck.
Well, if it depends. See, if I was a sketchy carrier, I would probably hop off and do the $8 a mile. But if I'm a responsible carrier, I would still stick to my dedicated because So what's we don't have any dedicated stuff, and we want to get some dedicated stuff. What's nice with dedicated, I wouldn't put all my trucks on dedicated lane, right? I would kind of keep half of them on dedicated and half of them on spot. But basically, just keep it running, because when there's load times, like right now, we're struggling to find any loads off the board. So I would love some dedicated stuff at 250 or whatever it would be. Yep. And then the rest of it, let us or the dispatchers try to cover the rest of it with the spot rates.
Well, so FreightWaves has an index called truck rejected tenders, right? Is that what it's called? Tender rejections. I mean, I understand why they measure it. I'm not saying FreightWaves is asinine, but the whole idea is asinine, right? Because if we had an ability to mass communicate as an industry, we wouldn't even have contract rates. And then every shipper would say to me, no, Brad, you don't understand. Our business, blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? It's the same as everyone else's. If you had a technology that could literally mass communicate with every truck driver in America, you would never have contracted rates. I mean, I don't think airlines are selling contracted seats. Maybe they are, maybe to the really, really big companies. I don't know. But airlines sell based on market fluctuation. And right now, if you knew you could if you had access to 50,000 bids for a truckload right now, and that's essentially what brokers are doing, that, right? That shippers don't. Yeah. Shippers get a few different quotes from brokers, but brokers are accessing the boards and their network, and really that's what brokerage is today.
So I guess what you're trying to say is put all the carriers on one board or some kind of platform and have the shippers have a reach to them directly anytime they need anything, right?
I don't know that can happen in our lifetime, but I think that's if we were redesigning this industry, that's how it would work. Yeah. That's how it would work. But it's not the way that the major ERPs, and by extension, the ERPs that just created a piece of shit software and called it a TMS, called like SAP and Oracle, these massive TMSs, they're not live at all. They can only take this plan that's entered into the system. So if we know going to, it's static, going to Chicago or going to Arizona, it's this carrier. Like, you got to put it in. Those softwares haven't changed in 20 years. They don't have the ability to like literally be live and be dynamic. So that is what has created the opportunity for someone to do this. Now, so what to your point, if we had one platform, all the carriers, etc., SwanLeap just offered a bigger option, in my opinion, than what other shippers had access to. So it was like a little private network. So imagine, you're talking public, like massive, everyone on the same platform. Well, it would be like, if you were John Deere, you might have 20,000 carriers and they're all bidding on your freight. So that's still a lot of competition, but you're not talking, the whole market, which is like 980,000 MCs or whatever.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you need to like kind of filter through, because you don't want drivers or like owner operators with old equipment or something, especially if you're like hauling dedicated. If you're a shipper, right, you want somebody that's there to repower your truck, that's there to, like, I feel like that's why certain shippers go with bigger companies, because they know worst case scenario, they have a different driver that they could always, like rehook or repower or do whatever they got to do.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think it's clean that like there's somebody for everyone out there in this space, right? So if you were selling, like hauling scrap, you wouldn't care, right? But if you're hauling, Rolexes, you would, So those are kind of how I think you could create those things.
I just want to say something about that I wrote in today's newsletter. Was there was an investigative report done by the Wall Street Journal that was about the United States Postal Service, USPS. Essentially, USPS started using freight brokers a couple of years ago, and freight brokers promised like 15 to 20% rate deductions on all these lanes, and it actually spiked the amount of accidents that the USPS had ever since they started using freight brokers instead of carriers that had dedicated that were 20% more expensive than freight brokers. So it's kind of interesting. The Wall Street Journal did an investigative report on it, and it's kind of putting pressure on the USPS to go back to the dedicated carriers that were more expensive before relying on freight brokers, because freight brokers don't do all the compliance. And so that's kind of one of the tricky problems, I think, is figuring out the people that are using this software, the carriers that are using it, to make sure that they're safe, compliant, and have, like Bob said, good equipment and all that stuff, and aren't scammers or double brokers.
Yeah. And so SwanLeap stayed pretty, like, allowed each individual shipper to make their own carrier network. So basically, if you're a shipper of a major or a major shipper, you're getting calls every day, 20, 30 calls. I think you guys probably know that most of the shippers get 20, 30 calls a day, cold calls. So it helped those, decision makers handle those calls, because I think in theory, they all would want to know the good ones of the 20 that called, but they don't want to take the time to sort through all of them. So this allowed them to basically put everyone in a pool, help them get qualified with insurance, et cetera, and then allowed them to kind of compete for the business within that kind of a little more control than just wide open. So
of course,
I think it had a long way to go before we exited in November 2021 to TI, which is part of Nolan Transportation Group, or the parent of Nolan Transportation Group. I think they're going to take it to an additional level and just basically bring the tech that we built in-house as part of the TI and TG offering.
So,
Makes sense?
What year did you start SwanLeap, and what year was that in?
We started in the fall of 2013.
2013, okay. And then did you get investors right away? How did that whole look? How did you scale?
We took some family money. Yeah, we took some family money. SwanLeap made a lot of money in the early days, especially like on a percentage wise, because a lot of it was gain share based. And as our over the last 10 years, like the gain share model has kind of really like diminished. Because like back then we could get like 50. Like we could charge people in the early days like 50% of what we saved them.
Okay.
On a 3-year contract. And then, we had different metrics of how we measure that based on parcel, LTL, and truckload. But over time, that model, I mean, it's now if you talk to any gain share type consulting firm out there, I mean, they're charging like less than 10% probably is what I would expect to pay. So it was just kind of a nice time in the history that we could get a larger amount of money for adding value, but we never really took institutional money. So I was the majority shareholder without investors. So it was a good exit for us, and I think a really good timing for TI and MTG, because they were trying to build what we had already, and it gave them a pretty massive head start, and they're using the system today as part of their offering.
Okay, that's actually very interesting. So you said gain share, right? Sorry, this is one of the first times I've heard using that metric. So gain share, and now I'm guessing that's diminished because of more competition in the freight tech side.
No, I don't know a lot of companies that do freight gain share and parcel. Parcel gain share is kind of where it came from. So they get a lot of people, like former retired UPS executives, that would start these parcel gain share companies to go out and renegotiate UPS contracts. Now that they left UPS, they can help shippers renegotiate their UPS contracts. I think the biggest company in that space is a company in Memphis named Green Mountain. They're pretty big, pretty massive. Like, I know that they had said that they had they wanted like 200 customers only at one point. I don't know. I haven't talked to them in a long time, but so they helped like Kohl's and Target and to fix their contract and and I don't know how. I think Green Mountain has their own way. It's not gain share, but Shipware is in California. They're up there with offering that service, and I think they still do a gain share, but again, I haven't really looked at those companies in a couple of years. So
sure. And Brad, I saw that in 2018, SwanLeap was recognized as the fastest growing company in America by Inc. 5000.
Yeah.
Could you tell us more a little bit about that and how you're able to like grow? I don't know, like that
Well,
quickly?
Well, yeah, I've taken a lot of heat about that number. I mean, I don't know if you guys know how the ink is measured. I mean, they actually validate your K1s. I mean, there's not a way to mess that up or try to fudge that. It's legit.
Mm-hmm.
They take a 3-year growth average is how it's measured. And so I know people have been like, scuffed at us on that, but those numbers are real and we did it. Flexport was right behind us. And I know that, we had a lot of flow through cost of goods in that model, right? Like clearly we weren't making, that wasn't all revenue. It was a lot of freight revenue flow through, but Flexport's on that list right behind us too. And you don't think they have, cost of goods to the ocean carriers as part of the revenue? Of course they do. So, I mean, I really didn't care, that I caught heat on that, but we went from 100,000 to in 2013 to like 125 in 2014 to 1 million.
Okay.
125,000. I mean, because we were building the tech,
Yeah.
And then we went to a million, and then 8 million, and then 99 million, and then 150, and then 250. Wow. That's how our revenue went. Yeah. So it went pretty fast. I mean, but when you're small, a couple accounts difference, can really change your number, right?
Yeah.
So,
100%.
I mean, we had Weir Global was a massive company. I mean, Weir, it's a company I never heard of. And they were huge. So that was a lot. That was a ton of revenue for us. And
Got it.
they're a Scottish-based oil services company.
Okay.
But then like when COVID came up, we had a lot of oil companies for some reason. Like what ended up happening was Weir hired us because they're in Madison, or the decision was made in Madison, but they're headquartered in Glasgow.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a perfect storm because right when Weir decided to hire us and we had like our first kickoff meeting in person, like almost everyone else from all the different business units like left the company right after that meeting. And when they got to their new company, like several of those companies called us and hired us.
Okay.
So it was like, it was really fortunate, so, I mean, but I think anybody has that, has had that really good customer that, has become like a friend or, would invite you to their family barbecue,
Sure.
We all have those customers. So we, that was really nice that we were able to just get a ton of business thrown at us in the oil business. But COVID sucked for us because a lot of it was like a base cost plus transactional, and a lot of those oil services companies just stopped, right? Like you're not I mean, oil companies were turning drills off and sending people home because nobody was really buying oil to the same degree. And so they weren't servicing the wells and they weren't sending minerals.
Brad, did you just have a huge dip in revenue when COVID hit?
Yeah. We
like how can you tell us like the numbers? Just like the percentages?
I don't know what my NDA is. I'd rather not say on here. I don't remember what it was, but it was hard for us to raise money because our revenue was coming down at a time when if we had more exposure to e-commerce, our business would have looked very different. And we turned on so much business so fast that we really didn't focus so much on sales back then because it wasn't, and that's one of the things in hindsight, I didn't like about SwanLeap was that to turn on a client, to get all the buy-in from the company to like, here's the new platform, here's the new process for freight payment audit. It all worked awesome. When it was in place, it saved companies money and offered visibility, et cetera. But it took a lot of people across departments of a company that typically don't talk to each other or oftentimes don't like each other to work together in the best interest of the company. So to onboard a company was really a long process to get the systems talking, to automate the freight procurement. Because a lot of times when freight leaves the door to the big shipper, it triggers the invoice to go to the customer. I don't know if brokers don't necessarily touch that so much, but but we were really involved in that. And then we really did a ton on the inbound side, which is an area that back in like 2018, 2017, that really was a new idea that, hey, we should be using tech to procure better for inbound and not let our vendors ship to us. So we have control and visibility and tracking and quality of what's coming into us. And that all that was kind of a new little sub industry into TMS and really logistics, I think. So there was a lot of things happening that made, if we signed $100 million company, it might take us 7 months to get them up and running, Yeah. And so I mean, we can only do maybe 5 or 6 companies at a time of that magnitude, because you're talking about different business units, different locations. I mean, it was really difficult. I think we had like 60 or 70 locations in North America. I mean, we had to roll out our system to every one of those and get all those people using the system. And you got to imagine a lot of people didn't want to do it. So we have to fight. And I mean, it was hard.
Yeah, definitely.
So in hindsight, that's what I didn't like about our business, right? It was really tough to fight through corporate bureaucracy and exhausting.
Sure. And most of your customers were pretty big, right? Like big corporations.
Yeah, right. And it took a really strong leader to be like, no, this is what we're doing. Like, So it took like a weird window of an executive. It took somebody that is new to the company, that wasn't emotionally involved in what had been done before. Okay. So they had to be like, for example, a lot of times we display C.H. Robinson, right? But if the guy who or woman who hired C.H. Robinson 5 years ago was there, we got a fight on our hands, because it looks like we're gonna make them look bad. Okay. And so that was a common fight. Or maybe a company just bought another company and they want to get global visibility into procurement and tracking and cost and et cetera. But this very big business unit used C.H. Robinson. Well, then we have a fight on our hands. Even though the big mothership is like saying, no, this is what we're doing, they would say, no, we're not doing it. And I mean, I have to go tell on them, right? Like those are tough things about SwanLeap that made it,
Was C.H. Robinson your largest competitor on that side?
No, it depended on the scope that we were being brought in to handle, because C.H. Robinson, I think, offers a very different service. And the way we sold against C.H. Robinson is, no, you can still use C.H. Robinson in the platform. It's not us or them. Yeah. We're agnostic. We're blue ocean. I think the best competitor for us was Blue Jay, because Blue Jay offered that same level of like visibility across modes. That was kind of back in that time in 2016 to 2020. That was the message that companies were waking up to, like, hey, we're doing a big parcel business, we're doing a big LTL business, we're doing a big truckload business, all don't talk to each other. And so let's get this kind of harmonized. And Blue Jay kind of like took pieces of different softwares and then made one company from different softwares. So I think, and I was really good friends with their former CEO. He was a great mentor to me. But I really don't think the offering was strong, but the message was strong and the brand was strong. Like they had, every company you can think of knows them or uses them. And
sure.
And so I think that they had a good offering if you're in the seat of the decision maker, but in my opinion, they were offering patchwork of different softwares that kind of tried to work together. So
sure.
Honestly, I'm just so shocked how many different businesses there are in the transportation business. Like I feel I've never even imagined this or even heard of it, and it's just like
on the shipper side.
It's insane.
Well, I mean, I could probably rattle off like 50, and there's a lot more, but 50 different parcel TMSs that only do parcel. So And the way that most of them used to work, and I'm guessing they've modernized now, but they used to say anything like 1 to 5 packages ship post office, 5 to whatever. If it's going, over, across to Canada, ship it per later. If it's on this promotion, then ship 2 days, ship FedEx. Like that's literally business rules govern that industry, static rules. And then, but nobody was rate shopping like live. And so we were just born in an era, that we got lucky because we didn't know anything different. We only know API. So imagine a company got 5,000 e-commerce orders in like an hour ago. It depended on how good their ERP was, if it was a modern one or if it was Oracle. Oracle would be on the old side, in my opinion. Then they might dump out to us 4 times a day orders. And then we would take that first order and we would send out like 6 or 8 API calls. And we'd take the second order simultaneously and send out 6 or 8 API calls. This is the power of the cloud. So we could take all 5,000 orders and make, 10 different API calls or whatever they have set up in their system for every one simultaneously. And within probably less than 60 seconds, we can have the best possible price and service decision made for all 5,000 packages instead of business rules. So what we used to do, oftentimes we were talking to a prospect, we would go to their website and order something overnight to like a place close by their DC. And then we would show them, hey, you shipped this overnight, but it would have gotten there overnight if you shipped it ground anyways. So you just wasted $40 on the shipment. And like address, you ever know, like if you're you ever experience if you're on an e-commerce site and they correct your address, like a lot of companies didn't do that back then. I mean, I think it's pretty common now, but a lot of companies didn't do that back then. So that's an area we would save companies $3.
Oh, wow.
If the package was wrong, then they'd have to pay $3. So there was a lot of those things that the cost visibility to brokers, to shippers, it's almost like executives knew back in the early 2000s, but they just didn't care. Because as long as it's on budget, and we're hitting our profit margins, and it's okay.
And
but over the last 5 years, people have woken up to try to find ways to be more efficient.
I feel like they woke up too much because now all the rates are down and we can't haul any good freight. So we need to go back.
We need less truckers on the road.
I don't know. It seems like everybody's trying to be more efficient in everything, but then it's like, then it comes down. I don't know. Maybe it just feels like the carriers are just at the bottom of the whole thing, I don't know.
Less people for the cycle. But
I hate what I feel that people do to carriers, man. Because I mean, we got to take care of our truck drivers, without the truck drivers, I don't think people, realize how dependent we are on making sure that those men and women we treat them right. The two most underrated classes in our society today are truck drivers and honeybees, right? Like we got to take care of them.
No.
Yeah,
we can't have either go extinct.
I should make that into a meme, Like honeybees and truck drivers, underrated, most underrated.
Yeah, we're screwed without both of them, right? So,
Brad, so I'm actually wondering the whole sale process behind SwanLeap, which I think is, I find pretty fascinating. You built up a business, SwanLeap, to you said it was around 250 million in revenue when you sold it?
At the peak.
No,
we were down a lot.
Okay.
Down, more than 25%.
Got it. I know that you had multiple offers for companies that wanted to buy you out. Can you tell us how that whole looked like, how it went down, and then I don't know how your life changed once you were acquired?
Yeah, that's a good story. So we were headquartered in Madison, Wisconsin, and during that time, in the fall before the school year started, so that would have been in July and August, I had gone to Medellin, Colombia, to go visit a client, and I just gotten back, and the school announced that they were closing schools for the year already for COVID. That would have been 2020.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, are we gonna sit in Madison, Wisconsin? And I was already like kind of frustrated with all my development team because they were all prima donnas, like, I can't come to the office. I'm like, come on, let's just toughen up, lock arms, and like run through walls. You know, that's kind of the approach. And I don't think that resonated well with my team. And it's like no one was coming to the office, just me and our controller and my VP of ops. Got a lot of ping pong games in those days because there wasn't a lot happening, right? I mean, we do, you know, we'd be like, we got five minutes before the meeting, and we had the games down to like 2 minutes. Like we could do a game in 2 minutes, you know? So it was fun in a lot of ways, but also frustrating for me because my leadership style was to say like, hey, Paul, I saw what you did on that thing. Good job, man. Like, and I felt like we had developers leaving for like $5,000 and $10,000 salary differences. You know, like it's insane. Like the whole like let's unite behind a vision and change the world, which I think every small scrappy startup company tries to emulate. But and we did it. We did that. You know, conveyed that message. Like that was lost. So I wasn't having fun as CEO. I mean, revenue was tough. We were having to resell accounts. We couldn't go visit accounts. We couldn't like, you know, we liked the QBRs, the quarterly business reviews, because it felt like we could keep close to our clients, and like that was taken away from us. That was tough. So like, I'm literally like in the fall thinking, are we really going to sit in Madison? There's nothing here. So I told my wife, like, why don't we go to like Colombia or Costa Rica or Panama and just like go with the kids and work from there, you know, no big deal. But then when the COVID rhetoric was really ramping up before the elections and things, I'm thinking like, wow, what if we leave and they tell us we can't come back or something crazy, right? So we just decided to like try Puerto Rico because it was an easy, you know, flight, and, you know, there's no customs for US residents. And so we came here, and I'm sitting out on the balcony in January. I'm just fighting with developers about like, I don't remember, like, you know, something about like coming to the office or something like that. Personnel issues is what I'm saying. And we had like 7 inbound inquiries, and they weren't cold. Like, I never really take cold inquiries. I always assume it's like some venture capital or PE firm's nephew that needs a job, you know, like, you know, like, but these were legit, right? I mean, like from leading companies in our space. And so NTG was the first one to go like, we want to buy you. And I kind of was like, no, you know, like every entrepreneur. And in truth, looking back, guys, I think a lot of entrepreneurs probably will tell you that they don't know what their business is worth. They can't imagine their life without this identity, and they can't imagine their life without this vision that they've like given everything to. So in many ways, it was a very emotional, I didn't realize how emotional I was about the business because I had given so much to it. Right. I mean,
Right.
the kids, I mean, were, you know, my kids were involved in the business. I mean, they knew that I would have to leave. I mean, so many times I came home on a Sunday, arrived on Sunday, and was out again on Sunday night, you know, like those things happen. And so it was a big drain. And so when I realized, like, looking out at the ocean on the balcony, and like, okay, what if I just like realize I'm not going to be a billionaire? Because I don't know that any entrepreneur would be honest in that themselves that they're building. Like, they all thinking they're gonna this is gonna keep continuing, right? So what if I realize I'm not gonna own a helicopter, and I'm not gonna be a billionaire, but looking, what else do we really need beyond this, right? Like what if this was just life? Like, it's pretty good, and I don't have to deal with it with this a-hole I just got off the phone with, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so Jason Swanson, my CTO, talked to me about this, and he's like, well, let's entertain some of these discussions and let's just get rid of this company. We got problems. We got problems in personnel, we got problems. Like there's headaches all over the freaking place. You know what I mean? And I didn't realize like what burnout looked like. I was burnt out, but I would never admit that to myself at the time. Burnout to me, I would define as like, imagine when you're starting a company and Paul, you're, fresh with this podcast and your identity and everything's still fun. And you turn your computer down for the night and then you're like, oh shit, I forgot that one thing. And you turn it back up. Right. And you send that one email or do that one thing. And then you shut it down again. Like for me, I would work late at the office sometimes to like, 10, 11 at night. My wife be calling me like at 8 o'clock. Be like, yeah, I'll be there in 30 minutes. I'm going to leave in 30 minutes. And then like calls me 2 hours later. Like that shit went on all the time. But when something's screwed up in your company and you still leave your computer turned off, or something's screwed up and you turn the lights off and leave, that's when you should check yourself, in my opinion. Because that's what happened the last year. And COVID exhausted me. So Jason Swanson says like, let's just sell the company and we could just like take the money and rebuild it and just keep continuing. Clearly I needed that comment to help me emotionally get over this, to realize like, okay, I can still keep building, but it just may not be with this team. I never envisioned that before. So clearly we can't build TMS. I mean, any buyer would restrict that, of course, and I'm restricted from a lot of things, but building TMS is obviously not in the cards now or ever for me. But so that was the thing I needed to emotionally consider those offers. Make sense, guys? So nobody was like, hey, here's $1 gazillion. No one was like, here's $1 gazillion, in the offer. It was more about the emotion of sitting down and saying, but I never wanted to show that we were weak. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of entrepreneurs,
for sure,
they know their business is weak, especially at this time when our revenue was declining. I didn't want to show weakness to, some competitors that were approaching us to acquire what we had. So that's why I needed to emotionally get through that. And so thankfully I did, right? But when I saw what NTG was building and the vision they had, I was really excited for it, because I thought for a long time, C.H. Robinson has made a really, really good offering to shippers. It's hard to compete with their offering. They sell size, they sell tech, they sell everything's going to be awesome. And that's really the message that shippers have wanted for a long time. And that's why, and I don't like what they do to carriers, but it works. They keep carriers in their ecosystem, keep taking loads that are below what carriers can get elsewhere, but keep carriers blind to what the market rates are, keep shippers blind to what the market rates are. That's my opinion. But they did it in a way that made everything work well. And with the illusion of good technology, free. So I didn't see anybody else doing that well. And I thought there was a lot of room for improvement in everything I think that CH does well. But I heard NTG expounding upon some of the ideas I had. And so our visions were very much aligned. And the talent that they had over there that they were bringing on was so impressive to me. Like the credentials of the leadership team was incredible. And so, and the resources that they were looking to deploy into tech and how they were going to deploy it was amazing. And so that was a big thing for me.
Did you have to stay on for a certain time, like when during that transition for a certain amount of years or any months or anything like that?
Yeah, they wanted all of us to stay on. I have a diminishing role just to support. So that was kind of part of the agreement that we made. But one of the bad things too in SwanLeap, I think, was I was so involved in so many things, and it was more about like a reactionary response, like to workload, right? So if we got overwhelmed with this integration, I would help there, and if we had to like do financials, I would help there. Like I was involved in so many things. I think that NTG wanted me to come out of that and not be involved in everything. So many times it was like, hey, when they were going through their diligence, hey, what happens when this happens? And the department manager would say, well, we have to ask Brad, right? And it wasn't because of like micromanaging. It was because I think we were just literally growing so quickly with all this new integrations, and I was trying to secure the revenue and put the revenue on the books, that we really didn't run the company like very strategically, like where I needed to probably have, if I would have maybe investors and more like strategic hires, we could have probably planned things better. But we ran like a startup and ran fast and just tried to get revenue secured and tried to get revenue flowing through our company as fast as possible. And that usually meant me working harder and harder and harder and harder. So I think there's a lot of merit to that, a lot of good things with that, but also we were too big to be running that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in looking at myself, I mean, I know what I am now, right? I am not a $1 billion CEO. I can't do it. I only know I want to cancel meetings and work our asses off, right? I don't want to have meetings. And when we started getting to that level, it started to become like a burden to me, right? Like I want to let's just work our asses off and win business. And so I'm a startup guy and I know that now. So when we got to a certain level, I'm really impressed with the guys that, and the women that have grown companies from startup and then evolved as CEOs, like I think if you look at like Project 44 and Flexport, like the impressive story to me is the people that they put around, the people that the executive team has put around them, and the tough decisions they've made to replace people that took them from, this place to this place with people that are going to help them to get to the next one. And that was a shocking reality for me. When I got to like a certain level, I realized that those people that got me here are actually pulling me down from getting to the next level. That's hard.
That's interesting.
I mean, yeah. So that, I mean, when you see these CEOs evolve from startup to like massive, there was a ton of growth that went in there. And I think putting the right people around you along that way is tough, because that's a changing metric.
Yeah.
I heard Richard Branson recently say the secret to a big startup company is to find the best people in the world in that space and get them on your team. Well, that's wonderful. And I understand that, but like, how the hell can you do that if you don't have money?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so my answer was just to work harder. And in many ways, maybe SwanLeap could have been bigger without me, maybe I should have stepped aside sooner. I don't know, but I'm happy with what we did to get to what, the level we got to. So
question. So when you go to sell, I guess, a company, or like, so you have buyers reaching out to you, you don't even sell it anywhere, you don't list it. I mean, how does it work? Like, for me, I'm just curious, like, is there ever going to be a time where somebody wants to come and buy our trucking company? I think so. Yeah.
So what would happen is you would sign an NDA, of course, okay, at first, and then you would send financials. That's not a big.
But how did they reach out to you? Like, where do they find you? So what matters, I guess, what helps out with your company is you guys were on the Fortune 500, right? I'm guessing, so people know, or there's I guess hunters out there that are looking for specific companies to buy, or how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, I think more so it was like people in our case, it wasn't PE firms. It was people that were coming after us or attracted to us for our message, right? Like we're automating things with AI, etc. And so we had like
somebody that's already in that industry, basically.
Yeah, know. Yeah, we knew everybody that reached out, and they wanted they liked the message. They were after the same message, so they want to say like, hey, can we see your tech? We're interested in either partnering or buying you, and that's what everyone said. And that makes sense to me. A lot of times a buyout starts with a partnership, but in this case it didn't. So then it was like, okay, yeah, so we do a demo of the tech. Yeah, hey, we like what we see here. Could we get, if we went down the path of acquisition, could we get your financials? Now, your financials should be relatively easy to send. It doesn't take a lot, right?
Yeah.
In my case, I just exported out of our financial software, as cash basis and accrual basis. Just send them the file. So I sent usually like P&L for cash and accrual, and then balance sheet for cash and accrual. So just exported the reports and sent them, and then they came back with a bunch of questions, and that process also helped me to emotionally start to release, and they wanted, and then they would come back with more questions. Can we see your list of clients, and stuff? And the reason I never really wanted to go down this path before was because I never really wanted our competitors to see all that stuff. Because there's some NDAs, some protections, but I think we all know that if someone saw the recipe of how we're winning business or how we're weak, they could use it against us in a sales process. So I never wanted to do that. But that's how the conversation kind of went on. And we were having about, I think, 5 of those conversations simultaneously.
Oh, wow.
So my whole job from like February to like June was basically doing these calls. So now I'm not even working anymore. Like if I was like not coming to work, it would be the same output. You know what I mean? So basically I'm now getting to the point where I'm kind of like getting committed to not continuing this. And like, I'm emotionally checking out of SwanLeap a little bit. That's what really happened.
What was the magic number, Brad?
The magic number?
Yeah.
Is it
a
public number?
Well, first of all, our revenue wasn't, I wish I would have done our revenue different with our contracts with our clients. So I'm not going to tell you the number. I think I can't. However, I will tell you this. If you took a 12 times multiple for a software company, 12 times top line, and that, in my opinion, in that time, that's what the number should have been, right?
Okay.
It should have been top line, 12 times your net revenue, I mean. So take the flow throughout. We had a lot of revenue that didn't qualify because I mentioned that we did transactional revenue. Now, that transactional revenue, if you want credit for that transactional revenue, then typically they do it as a function of your profit. And they might give you like a 25, 30 times profit back in those days for a software company. But if you want, software companies should be doing ARR. A lot of our revenue did not qualify as ARR. So the buyers realized that, in my opinion, they realized that the software is more valuable to them with what they can do with their book of $1 billion of business. And I think they did some things that were nice to us in terms of helping us to get some credit for revenue that was maybe in a gray area. Does that make sense?
Okay. Sure. Okay.
So they didn't pay for market price for revenue that wasn't ARR, but they recognized the value of revenue that didn't qualify as ARR, where a PE firm may not have.
Sure. That makes sense. Brad.
So I thought it was a good way to, kind of compromise.
I unfortunately have to start wrapping up because I'm running late for a meeting, but I wanted to just get your, I guess, kind of input here. First, what kind of advice would you give to entrepreneurs that are currently in the freight and logistics world, like to Bob and I? And then what are you planning on doing now that you're financially free?
The first thing that I think I drastically underestimated was the strength of the people around me. Okay. So, a friend of mine who has exited several companies in software talked to a company and said, I'll help you guys. I'll be on your board. I want 10%. And those startup guys said, no, it's too much. And I said, and they told me this, and I said, listen, if I would have had that guy with me at the time, I would have exited for $60 million more than we did.
Oh, wow.
So you can never quantify that. And I think it's important to realize going in that you, as an entrepreneur, first time doing this, or even second, third time doing it, you don't know anything. And the power of networks, this industry is controlled by like a small group of people with that have their investments in everything. And you need to know who those people are. And I'm not talking
I
like
need to know
conspiracy
who those
Illuminati.
people are. Maybe they'll buy
Yeah.
me out.
Yeah, but they don't know who you are, and they don't
Yeah, I
know
know.
why you're good. And they don't. And for example, like if you were going to raise money right now, who would you call? I mean, that's if that's a question, you need someone like me or someone that's exited on your staff, and what you pay me is not relevant, right? To
Yeah.
what the value is of somebody that's done it. Like if you have trouble answering the question, who would buy me out? How do I get to them? Or how do I raise money? You need to find someone that you can put on your team that has those connections. Okay. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of incubator companies starting out that I would highly recommend, people getting involved with, because you get a lot of that guidance, and it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg in terms of equity. So that's a really important thing, is put good people around you that are very, very connected in the space. That's important. But what am I doing now? So I mentioned I'm a startup guy. I mean, I really love the startup world. I love the grind. Not many people are cut out for it. Like saying, hey, I'm going to go into this thing not expecting a paycheck for the next 2 years. That's not for a lot of people. And so I'm working with a number of startups. I've invested in some startups, nothing in the freight brokerage or TMS or freight payment audit space at all. But I feel that I kind of bashed SAP and Oracle earlier in this podcast. I think that they are really bad, really old technologies, but I still think that they are who shippers at a very big level continue to buy and implement. So I cannot like them, but I have to acknowledge their existence and try to, create systems that are ancillary to those. So that's what I've been working on is working with startups with little like niche services that don't have to displace anything to be successful. So I think if you look at the most successful companies in the last 5 years in logistics, they've all been bolt-ons to existing platforms that have worked, where SwanLeap needed to replace everything in existence to work. And I don't want to do that again. It's too much of a heavy lift for big companies to rip out everything and put something new in. So I'm excited for a number of ways to help truck drivers to make more money and to have more control and take back the negotiation power. I still feel that today, sitting here in June of 2023, it's truck drivers are dictated the pricing for the most part, and it can't be like that forever, because these men and women need to be paid for their time and their sacrifices. So I hope to help that.
Cool. Hopefully that changes, and hopefully we start making some money, because it's been freaking rough, but we'll see.
Well, we've been here as a business cycle in this industry many, many times. Yeah. And we know how it goes. We know what happens. It's just painful. But I think overall, we can use this time to try to change how it works.
Yeah. Is there a big logistics thing in Puerto Rico? Is there like truckers in Puerto Rico and stuff? Semi trucks?
Crowley runs this place basically. The shipping between the states, and then Zim is here. That does the drayage. I see their stuff on the road a lot, but the island's only 3 million people, so it's really not a huge market, and it's really difficult to drive.
Me and Paul will have to come and visit there and do a second podcast there on the beach.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
I do apologize. I do have to get going. So I'm late for a meeting. They're waiting on me. So Brad, it was great talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on. Obviously, we'll have to continue the conversation. But wonderful story. It was actually really, really interesting to hear what you've experienced throughout your life. And thanks for coming on today. It's been great.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you, Brad. We'll stay in touch and hopefully jump on another podcast and talk again.
Happy to help, guys. I love what you're doing. Thanks for everything.
Okay. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.
All right, take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Daily FreightCaviar Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, or if you didn't, leave a review. Let me know what you think. I appreciate any feedback. If you'd like to have more FreightCaviar content, go to freightcaviar.com and subscribe to my email newsletter.